Good morning, folks. Happy Tuesday. We'll get started in a couple minutes, but thank you for joining. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started. Welcome to SkyBitz office hours. My name is Sarah Deitch. I am a customer success manager with SkyBitz. And on behalf of everyone at SkyBitz, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. This morning, we'll be hearing from Lisa Flynn, who is the director of our delivery services team. She has a fantastic presentation queued up regarding managing the 3G sunset. So it's a really important topic, especially right now. Few housekeeping items and we'll get started. Everybody's lines are muted. So if you have any questions later and you wanted to speak out, if you've muted yourself, you're going to have to unmute yourself. So don't worry about doing that. We've got that covered. If you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them in the questions or the chat sections. We will address all questions at the end of the session. So if you think of something, you don't want to wait till the end, just type it in the chat, type it in questions, and we will get to everybody to the best of our ability. Any run over questions, of course, we have everyone's email so we can reach out to you if need be. And thankfully, all of our sessions are recorded and they will be posted on the SkyBitz YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, just head on over to YouTube, type in SkyBitz in search, and then just subscribe to our channel. There's a lot of content on our channel, not just the training sessions. The past training sessions are there. Any training sessions we've done over the years are there, as well as content on the industry. So please head on over to the SkyBitz YouTube channel and subscribe. And lastly, I know everyone wants to know about this, the DoorDash coupon. They will be emailed to you after the session concludes. So just give us about 15 to 20 minutes post session and we will email you the link. That will be good for 24 hours. So I'm going to shut up now. And without further ado, please welcome Lisa Flynn.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it very much. I'm looking forward to my DoorDash as well. But more importantly, looking forward to getting started with our session today. I'm excited for everybody to join us. Hopefully the 3G sunset is not something that is new to everybody, but if it is, I'm here to fill in some of those gaps and help to make sure you have a good plan in place to have this not impact you. So the countdown has officially begun. There are 105 days approximately remaining until AT&T will be shutting down their 3G network. So AT&T is shutting down their 3G network at the end of February. Verizon is also shutting down their network as well. A little background on the why. So the network carriers worldwide are transitioning to 4G LTE and beyond, and they're doing that to really accommodate newer technology and improve network capacity. So this is not a SkyBitz decision to do any of this. This is really all on the networks of AT&T and Verizon. So what will happen is beyond the sunset of February 22 for AT&T devices that use 3G network or older will no longer work. So the carriers, AT&T, Verizon, need to repurpose the 3G spectrum that those devices are currently operating on so that they can make way for newer network bandwidth. So that's going to allow upgrading to 4G LTE services. We'll have a whole more improved speed, future capability with 5G. So it's really on AT&T and Verizon to sunset the 3G so that they can make way for bigger and better. So what does that mean for you and the impact on your business? So some of our SkyBitz older or legacy devices do run on these 3G networks. At this point, it's likely that your business is going to consist of devices that are probably a mix between 3G and 4G LTE services. So those devices that are only capable of 3G will no longer work past the sunset date, and you will need to physically replace those units. Else, after that date, the units will go dark and you will no longer have visibility into them. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you get ahead of this as quickly as possible, have a solid plan in place to ensure that your units are replaced before the sunset happens. Many folks have asked, what about an extension? Is there a possibility for it? So SkyBitz, as well as many other customers, have been petitioning for an extension through AT&T and Verizon. At this point, and the likelihood of an extension from what we're hearing is very unlikely. So it's not a strategy that we recommend anybody to assume that they're going to extend. Again, many different types of customers and companies across the US are asking for this extension, but one has not been granted and we're not expecting it. So the real gist of things is you need to make sure you have a plan in place for any 3G devices that you plan to continue to utilize to get those replaced before the end of February. So for our session here today, what I really want to focus on is identifying your lists that need upgrades. So we'll look at how do I use Insight, the website, to be able to determine which of my devices are 3G versus 4G, and help to put a plan in place, right? You want to establish a solid installation plan, a refresh plan to make sure that everyone knows exactly what needs to happen. And then you want to execute off that plan. So shipping units out to the correct locations, making sure units are installed and replaced, regularly monitoring the folks that are doing the replacements for you, tracking those upgrades. And one of the big pieces that I'll talk about today is making sure you notify SkyBitz customer care team that a 3G unit has been replaced, because you want to have that unit removed from the account so you no longer are billed for those services. And we'll talk more about that during the call today as well. And then finally, the end goal is to make sure you have no 3G units in your account by the end of February. So to look at this a little bit more in detail in terms of some, again, high level things that I really want to make sure you take away from this session are, again, you can use Insight to understand the impacts across your 3G devices. I'm going to show you where that is. And you do want to work with your sales rep if you have not yet to upgrade, to identify which upgrade options that you want to utilize to replace any of those 3G units. Your salesperson is really the best person to work with you on that if you haven't done so already. Your 3G devices do not need to be returned to SkyBitz. You can keep them. In most cases, we highly recommend that any existing 3G devices just be left on your asset, whether it's a van, it's a chassis, it's a flatbed, as long as it does not impede where you need to put the new 4G device, you may leave it on. If there's any reason why where the new unit needs to go does impede the installation, then you can go ahead and remove that existing device and it can be recycled. So again, the big thing here is, you can go a lot faster if you can keep those existing 3G units on your trailers, on your assets. You don't have to worry about patching holes, anything like that. So they do not need to be returned and can be kept on the trailer or your asset as needed. Again, it's going to be extremely important that you make sure that you're regularly monitoring and tracking all of your upgrades. You want to make sure that you know who is doing replacements, what unit was replaced with which, so that you can make sure those updates have been done in Insight. You want to make sure you're tracking those updates and making sure the data is accurate. And lastly, as I talked about just a moment ago, it is the customer's responsibility to notify SkyBitz when you have removed a existing 3G unit that you no longer need to monitor on the website. So whether you physically removed that unit or you've left it on the asset, but you've installed a new LTE 4G unit, or maybe it's a trailer that you're going to retire. So any of those situations, you do need to email SkyBitz with the list of serial numbers that you would like to have removed from your account. Our customer care team will then remove those units from your account, and that will also trigger the cancellation of those services. So that will be then, that means no more billing of those units to you. So it's very important that you do that in a very timely manner. We recommend on a weekly basis, just to make sure you stay in target and on target with it, to make sure nothing slips by. And that way you're ensuring that these units get removed from your account quickly. So main key items that I wanted to make sure we hit on. I'll hit on them throughout the rest of the presentation as well. But in order to first get started, I also want to help showcase some additional items as well. So there is a 3G technology refresh guide that is in the Insight website that is available for you to utilize. It is going to cover all of the same topics that we're going to talk about here in this presentation, but it's just in a Word document format that lays everything out quick and to the point. So you'll be able to find this document in Insight in either the Resource Center under the technical bulletins, or also within the help section, which is the little walk me section at the very bottom of the screen. And you'll see it as the 3G technology refresh guide. If you're looking at it right now, there's one update that we're pending to make sure it gets added into this walk me section. I expect that to be there this afternoon, just with some additional ways to be able to search for your target list. So that'll be coming by this afternoon. But this document, again, is going to cover all the things that we'll look at today. So I'm going to talk about where you can find information on your hardware, what your kind of planning should be, and keynotes, all those types of things. But this is a great document just to really print out and use as a framework. So before you even get started, what I highly recommend is certainly after you've worked with your sales rep and you know what units that you're going to be installing that are going to replace your 3G devices, is to go out to our website and download those hardware data sheets for whatever unit that you're installing. Maybe it's a Connect, maybe it's a camera, maybe it's a SkyView. So you have the ability to download those data sheets. Just gives you and your team an idea, and make sure you have more knowledge about the units that you're installing. And then extremely important to make sure you pull down the installation documentation. All of that installation documentation can be found within Insight. On the top right-hand corner, you can see a Resource Center. And then in the middle section is the hardware documents. And based upon all the different hardware we have, it also breaks it down by the asset type and then has installation documents within it. So you're able to pull that. And in addition, there's also the SkyBitz mobile app also has the installation guides in it as well. So that's an alternative way, especially for those folks that are out in the field and don't have access to a laptop or a computer. A quick and easy way is to access that through the SkyBitz mobile app. So important to make sure that you know what hardware am I installing and how do I install it. The next step that's critical is creating your target list. So to have a core list of units that you know need to be replaced before the end of February. Our engineering team has made some updates into Insight over the last month or two and made that very easy for you to be able to do so. So you can go into, again, Insight and click on the Locate Assets tab. And within that Locate Assets, you'll want to click on Asset View. This will then allow you to filter by, you'll see here on this right-hand side, operational 3G. So you're going to want to say, yes, show me my 3G units. You could say no, and that would show you anything that's not a 3G unit, or you could do either, and that would show you all your 3G and non-3G devices. So for the purposes of identifying which 3G units you have, you will want to click on yes. And then I also recommend taking a look at this installed as well. So the options for install there are going to be installed only, so only those units that have an asset ID associated to it, uninstalled only, which means serial numbers or assets that do not have a trailer number or an asset number associated to it, or all, which means everything. So my recommendation to you first is to download everything with installed equals all. So that's going to show you every 3G unit that is currently within your account, and then you'll be able to look at the asset ID And if there is one assigned, then that would be considered an installed asset. And if there is not a asset ID associated to that serial number, you would see a -1 or an NA. So those NAs and -1s would be your indication of these have already been replaced, perhaps, so you can monitor those. And then that would be a way for you to submit that list to our support team. But again, I'll dive into that in a little bit further. But my recommendation here is go to, again, locate assets, asset view, set your 3G to yes, and your installed to all to pull back every single 3G unit that you have so that you know exactly what you have as a task. With that asset list and target list, I also recommend looking at it in terms of what are you going to do with those assets? Are any of them going to be retired? Are any of them been in an accident and they need, those assets are being replaced? And which ones are staying within your fleet that you know you do not want to lose visibility? So add those components to that target list so that you know what you need to target. Some additional planning that I recommend doing is thinking about how am I going to tackle my 3G upgrades. Now, certainly SkyBitz can assist. So if you do need some assistance with, project planning for things like this, or with third-party installers, this is something that SkyBitz can certainly help with. You can reach out to your sales rep and they can get engaged with the appropriate folks on the SkyBitz side to be able to assist. What I do recommend here is thinking about who is going to do your installs or your replacements for you. Is that going to be third-party folks? Is it going to be your maintenance staff? Is it your drivers? Who's going to do it? Once you've identified who's going to do the installations, you need to make sure they're trained on it, especially if this is a brand new product that they have not installed before. You're going to want to make sure they know what is the asset, what is the device look like, how is it installed, how do I activate it, how do I use the mobile app. So you do want to make sure that those installers have all of those details. And in addition, I also like to say you want to make sure that those installers, that their expectations are set properly, so that you expect them, for example, to use the SkyBitz mobile app, that you expect them to be able to replace 15, 20, 100 per week. And that you expect them to provide documentation with what they've completed. So I highly recommend that you ask your installers to provide you daily with a list of, here is the trailer number that I did a replacement on, here is the original serial number, and here is the new LTE unit that has been installed. If they provide that to you, you can then use that on a daily basis to double check them, make sure they didn't do any fat fingers with using the mobile app, making sure that they actually did use the mobile app, and it gives you that clear picture of exactly what has happened in the field, especially if you're not the one doing it. So very much recommend doing this on a daily basis with your installers so that you stay ahead of it. Also, in terms of planning, is where are your installations going to take place? Are they going to take place at your own terminals? Are they going to take place at trailer pools, your customer locations? Are there on-site requirements that maybe some of your customers have? I know COVID is a big player at this point. Some facilities are requiring that you have to have a test. Some are just requiring masks. Others may have certain hours of operation that folks can only be on site. So think about not only where, but what are the requirements and things to ensure that someone can be on site and can be doing those replacements. And lastly, thinking about your inventory. You need to make sure that these installers have inventory in order to do the replacements. So making sure wherever those installs are going to take place, are you going to ship units to it? Are they getting stored in a certain location at the office? Is there a container that's storing them? Does the installer need to go to a certain shop and pick units up, do replacements, and return any unused to the shop again? So think about all of those pieces in terms of who's doing their installs, what are you expecting, where the install is going to happen, and do we have inventory? So key components to making sure that you have a solid plan in place for your 3G replacement plan. Once you've got this in place, you're off to the races. You're able to have your installers go out there and start getting these replacements done. I highly recommend keeping track of all of these as well, just to see your run rates and are you on target. And how can you do that? How do you ensure that your devices are installed, that they're validated, and that you're tracking them properly? Again, as I just talked about, make sure you get that additional information from the installers, so having them send that to you daily. But then you can also use the SkyBitz mobile app as well as the Insight application to keep track of those. So two different ways. The first way I'll talk about is using configure assets. If you go to configure assets, asset MT setup, and activity report. This is going to allow you to see a report of all of the activity that's happened within the account. So you'll see new installs. You'll see, for the most part on these 3G replacements, you'll see moves or replacements. So that way you can see, what is happening. It'll show you the old serial number and the new serial number and the asset number. So it really allows you to see all of those details from what's actually happening from the system backend. And again, you can compare that to what your installers are providing you. The other place, again, to look at is what we just pointed out a few minutes earlier when you're generating your target list. So if you go back to locate assets and asset view, and you can filter by installed, uninstalled, like we talked about in the operational 3G. So in this case, for trying to track what has truly been replaced in the field, you would expect that your 3G units would be yes, and your uninstalled only. That should show you the list of trailers list of SkyBitz 3G devices that no longer have an asset associated to it. You're then able to take that data and you can pass it along to our support team to say, please remove these 3G units from our account. They're no longer in use. Lastly, one other option that you can utilize as well is in the mobile app. For those folks that are more familiar with the mobile app and don't have access to Insight, you can also use the diagnostic tab on the mobile app. That's typically something used by maintenance personnel on the ground as well, and that'll give you basically the same type of information as well. So that's an option as well. So once you have all of this data, you're tracking it, you're monitoring it, the next thing here is making sure that you're consistently telling our support team that these units need to be removed from the account. So again, it is the responsibility of the customer to provide that list to SkyBitz. We don't want to proactively remove anything from the account because maybe you're going to reuse that unit until the sunset occurs and you need to use it someplace else, or maybe it was incorrectly unassociated to a trailer and you're still trying to find it. So we want to make sure that we're being told by our customers that these units are truly no longer in use and that they can be removed from the account. So we ask for you to send us that list of 3G serial numbers to our support team. You can see the email address here. It's customercare.skybitz@amatech.com. Again, we really do recommend that you provide that to us on a weekly basis. That's really for your own benefit, right? It makes sure that you're staying on top of it. At the end of the month, if you have 400 units that have been removed, it's a lot to look at. If you're just looking at maybe 50 to 100 a week, it makes it easier. Even if your numbers are smaller, it still helps to just really make sure that you're being consistent. And these requests for removals will have an impact on your billing. So it's critical for you to submit this request in so that the devices can be removed from Insight, but also removed from your billing as well. So I'll summarize with some reminders for some key steps that we talked about throughout the session here today. So number one, make sure you create that target list for all the units that need upgrades. Again, look at the various things within your assets. Which ones do you truly need to have upgraded, and make sure you have a plan in place to hit those. So establishing that solid installation refresh plan. Who's going to do the installs? Are they trained? Do they have access to the mobile app? Do they have inventory on site? And then executing against that plan. A reminder, 3G devices do not need to be returned to SkyBitz. Again, they can be left on your asset as long as they don't impede with the new LTE unit being installed. They do not have to be removed. It's key that you regularly monitor and track all those upgrades in the system, and again, notify SkyBitz with the specific serial numbers that you want to be removed to our customer care team. So can't stress all of these kind of key steps to make sure you have a great solid plan in place. Now, for some folks, this may be the first time you're hearing some of this, or some of you may have been already starting your 3G plan, and you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. If that is the case, we can help. There is the self-help documentation that I talked about that is available in Insight and on the Walk Me page and in the Resource Center that walks through the things that we talked about here. You can implement the things that we talked about on our session here today. But if you're still feeling a little bit lost or just in needing still some more support, knowing that that 3G deadline is quickly approaching at the end of February, we're here to help as well. So you can certainly reach out to your sales representative if there's a need for any type of project management to help us, help you facilitate. If you need third-party installation support, so we do have a third-party network that we utilize. If there's training that's needed for how do I install these units, those are all things that the sales rep can have those initial discussions with and determine the right teams to help with on the SkyBitz side. So if at any point you have any questions or things that we can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to make sure that you're successful with the 3G replacement campaign. The last thing I'll just leave up on the slide here is just some contact information so that everybody has it in one place with sales, our customer care team, and our billing team with phone numbers, email addresses, and hours of operation. So if there is anything at all that folks need, you have some contact information for you here. So with that, I think, Sarah, that hits on all of the main topics that I wanted to make sure that I covered today in the 3G upgrade. So let me turn it back over to you with see if there's any questions or things that folks have from the audience.
Thank you, Lisa. Very informative and super timely. I do have a question from Jeremy Garrison. What is the lead time for new 4G units? And I believe I can kind of feel that one. It's really something you might want to speak to your sales representative about. Depends on the device type that you're utilizing. I hope that helps. And then Bobby Elias has a question. Bobby, I'll unmute you and go right ahead with your question.
This also is probably just a question for the sales team, but I've had devices on back order since October 1st in the amount of 30 plus. And so with the delay on getting them shipped, it's really putting me in a pinch with meeting this deadline. I was just curious if you knew if there would continue to be a problem with supply.
Yeah, so that answer would kind of fall in line with Jeremy's. The customer experience team isn't necessarily going to have all that information, but the sales team should be able to assist you with time frames and, with supply chain issues that, I think everybody on this call understands that we've all kind of been racked with those issues. So, but thank you for the question, Bobby. I'm sure if you reached out to your salesperson, they'd be able to give you some assistance.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Anyone else have any questions? I don't see any hands and I don't see any raised questions in the chat or in the questions section. That was a very thorough presentation. I'm not surprised there aren't many questions. So Lisa, I thank you so much for your time and attention to this matter. Again, if our customer experience team consists of customer care, customer success managers, and the delivery services team with our customer engagement managers. So if you have any contact with any of us regularly, please just reach out with further questions. You can always reach out to your salesperson for sure to ask questions about the timeliness of deliveries of your 4G units. And I want to thank everyone for attending. We are on the final leg of our session. There will be one more webinar next week, same time, same place. We're going to jump into Insight to discuss how to utilize our idle reporting to maximize efficiency, fleet efficiency. So we'll go back to kind of old school stuff and talk about Insight. So please look forward to that next week and attend if you're here, and pass it on to your teammates at your respective businesses. Again, thank you for attending. Please go into the SkyBitz YouTube channel, check out our videos there, and subscribe if you would. We'd be thankful. And the last thing I want to remind everyone of is the DoorDash coupon. It'll be headed your way in about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll get that link out to you. It will last for 24 hours. So please use the DoorDash coupon today. And we thank you from the customer experience team. And please check us out next week on SkyBitz office hours. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.